Okay, for this portion of the class, we're going to colorize a matte photo with oil pastels or regular chalk pastels, either one. But for now, I'm using the water-soluble oil pastels by Crayola Portfolio series. And these are great because these are water-soluble. You can blend them with a brush and lay them down and layer them, and these are very soft and smooth. So I have 24 colors, but it doesn't matter what colors you use, as long as you have some light ones and dark ones. So here's the original photo with the color, and I found this photo of the sunflowers online, some clip art thing, and I'm just using this one as reference, and I printed a black and white one on matte photo paper. You could print it on watercolor paper too, and that would look, give you some texture and tooth for the oil pastels to hold on to. Okay, so I'm just going to leave this one as a reference. You could change the colors. You don't have to go by the colors that are on your photo. And for this one, I'm just going to colorize the big flower, and I'm going to leave the other things in black and white. And I might colorize the background a little bit, but we'll see. For now, I'm just going to start with the lightest color. Okay, and if there's any areas you want left white or lightened, really lightened, then start with the white, and this will give you a base that will lighten the colors. And so I'm just going in and I'm adding the highlights. You can also add some highlights in after too, but this I want some lighter yellow areas, and lighter than the yellow that I have in my box. So I'm just kind of adding some of those in where the lightest yellows are going to be on the petals. Okay, and then I'm going to take my yellow and I'm going to layer that over where I want yellow. And pretty much all my petals are yellow. I'm just going to, if you look at your photograph, you will see that it's not just one color, for each object, especially if you're working with flowers or nature. You have lots of different colors in there, lights and darks and a variety, and you can enhance it by adding your own, making your own colors. You don't have to copy what you have. You can just use it as a guide. And the nice thing about these is the lighter colors, you can see through them pretty much. So you're going to be able to see where the darker shades are. So if you start with the lightest areas, then you'll be able to go back in and add your darker tones over it. Okay, so I'm just doing that with the pastel. You can use a more painterly hand if you don't want to blend it. I advise not blending with your finger. I know a lot of artists do that. A lot of kids do that. And as an art teacher, I find that if you use your finger to smear, you're just basically lifting the color off onto your finger, and your image is going to look very flat and boring. So if you do need to blend colors together, I use like a Q-tip or a blending tortillon, which you can find, like a nib or blending tortillon you can find at art stores. They're just rolled up like paper, and that allows you to just kind of scoot the color around, and it will take some of the color off, but at least it's not going to, the oils on your finger aren't going to lift all that color away and make it look flat. Okay, so now I'm just adding a second color, which is a little bit of a yellow orange, because I like my sunflowers to have a little bit more of a warmer orangey color rather than a stark yellow, a daisy yellow, so I want it more interesting. So I'm just adding a little bit more interest, and you can see I'm not really being totally careful with this. I'm just kind of adding color, and I'm going to keep layering them on top of each other. Okay, and that way, so once I get this on here, that way it's going to give it more depth. I'm just going to continue to add a variety of colors that have the same family. So for example, if you are using lighter colors like whites and pastels, I advise not using, please don't use black right over it to darken the areas, because you'll end up with gray. unless you want that look. You know, I think using brown or a closer, darker color, it's going to give you more of a realistic look, if that's what you're after. Okay, so now I'm going to add a little more orange. And here, you know, once you get the bolder colors, you might, at this point, want to start blending with your Q-tip or tortillon. Okay, and you know, I'm just using a very light touch. I'm not scraping, I'm not rubbing too hard. I'm just kind of using a very light touch to blend it. Okay, so here we go, and I'll just keep this going. Now I'm using a golden yellow, which is a little bit more of a brown yellow on the darker parts. And you can see I'm just building up those colors. Those tones, the shades and tints, which are the lighter versions, and then the shades on top of the tint. And these are so oily that they lay really nice on top of each other. They really go down easy and smooth beautifully. Okay, and I have a dark brown, some in the middle here. I'm just going to dot it because there's little dots in the photo in the middle of the flower. You can also, for the darker areas, I'm going to add a little bit more around the edges here, and then I can blend. So see how I'm layering? I'm not just blending them all into a big mess. You know, I'm layering the colors, and then if I need to blend, I can add that later. Okay, and I just keep layering, adding more as I go. Okay, so that, and then I'll add the greens over the here. So start with your lightest ones first. You can always add light on top of the darks too. Lighten it up. Add highlights. See, I'm adding green in here. I might even add a little bit of green in my flowers, petals, so that you know, you just have a little bit of an interest color, not just yellow. Okay, so I did one, and this one I did more colors, and you can see how that came out. Okay, this is all done with oil pastels in the background. I took, if you want to use some water, just take your brush and add a little bit of water to it. You know, I suggest using something, not a really, really soft brush, just something that has a little bit of body to it so it's easier to grab the color. And you just add it, and that's really a nice way to blend, especially these. If you just have regular oil pastels, that's fine. You can just blend them together. You know, you're not going to be able to use the water, but it's a nice, oil pastels are great to layer on each other and build up a really rich, deep, beautiful color. Okay, so here you can see this one, and I've left the background black and white. Now this one I'm just going to do one of the flowers and then leave the rest black and white. Kind of like if you did that in Photoshop, but this is much more fun, I think, hands-on. Okay, so that's using oil pastels, portfolio or oil pastels, which I really like, or you can use regular oil pastels on there, and chalk pastels too. You can go over the color image with chalk pastels and lighten up some areas and make it more painterly and more artistic looking rather than just a flat photograph. If you add the chalk pastels to it, just like I did with the oil pastels, layering and blending a little bit with your Q-tip, and then just do that in some of the areas, not all over. Or if you had an area that you wanted to get rid of, like I might want to simplify this background and make it more blurry, and I would just add greens and some yellows and browns in the background and make it much more blurry. So I might just work on the background and leave the image alone, or enhance a little bit. Like maybe I didn't want this much texture in the middle, I just want to blend it a little more, so I could use the pastel to do that.